Hello, you gorgeous people out there, and welcome back to another video on the Rocket Shop. My name is Philip, and today we're going to talk about the mystery of Boca Chica's missing flame diverter. Currently, SpaceX is putting a lot of effort into building their very first orbital launch site for their Starship vehicle in Starbase, Texas. The concrete pillars for the launch mount were already erected many months ago, back in 2020, but the real work has been conducted in the past 4 months of 2021. Ground support equipment buildings are coming to existence, with some fake Starship tanks for propellant storage, and an enormous vehicle integration tower is rising into the Starbase skies. A lot of work has been conducted, leaving SpaceX Starship launch complex to actually looking like a proper launch complex. But there are two things missing at the orbital pad. The pad is seemingly lacking any kind of sound suppression system, and most importantly, a flame diverter. Every traditional launch pad needs some kind of sound suppression system and a flame diverter to ensure the safety of the vehicle, the pad, and the people around it. But SpaceX hasn't installed such systems on the orbital launch mount yet. There isn't even a flame diverter planned. At least the sound suppression system appears to be installed somewhere over the course of the next few weeks. Multiple weird channels have been spotted on the orbital launch tables inside. Those channels look like they will be used to guide some kind of liquid through the engine exhaust. And what liquid other than water do you want to pour into the exhaust plume of a rocket? Well, really nothing. Those channels are very likely part of a future sound suppression system for the orbital launch pad, since SpaceX already uses a lightened version of such a system on their suborbital pads A and B. But then there is the missing flame diverter. Elon Musk has stated on Twitter that SpaceX indeed wants to go and launch Starships to orbit without the flame diverter. It is unclear why they would leave such an important part out, but it might be due to complexity on the pad and cost savings, like everything at SpaceX. Despite deciding against building a flame diverting system, Elon noted in that specific tweet that having no flame diverter at all might indeed turn out a mistake. But what even is a flame diverter? Why do we use it? And most importantly, can we really leave it out? Flame diverters are usually made out of reinforced concrete and are mounted beneath the launch pad where the engine exhaust of the rocket is blown at. Engineers don't want the exhaust to hit the floor horizontally, so they install a slope redirecting the exhaust into the horizontal and away from the pad. Flame diverters are the reason why the smoke plumes of a launching rocket are always far away from the point the rocket lifts actually off from. The area in which the smoke becomes visible is where the engine exhaust energy becomes so low that the smoke begins to leave the horizontal and begins to rise into the air again. On some launch pads, this effect happens because of science, but sometimes, like on LC-39A, the slope of the flame trench, that is the channel the exhaust is blown through once horizontal, is slightly pointing towards the sky, so giving the smoke plumes a bit of vertical kinetic energy, deflecting them away from the pad infrastructure and into the sky. So that's what a flame diverter does and what it really looks like. But why do we need such a large structure beneath the pad? Just for redirecting some smoke? No. To answer that, we need to know what happens if you decide to not use a flame diverter. Imagine launching a rocket on a launch pad without a flame diverter, like SpaceX's orbital pad in Boca Chica. The engines of the launching rocket are probably around 10 meters above the ground, and their exhaust is shot directly onto the ground in a 90-degree angle. All of the force the engines produce, and in case of a Starship Super Heavy, that force is really enormous. It is pressing on the floor beneath the launch mount, and that leads to the floor getting damaged and pieces of it being blown into the air. Not only the launch pad gets eaten step by step by the exhaust of every single launch, but flying pieces of the material beneath the pad can directly damage the rocket and therefore threaten this mission's success. And SpaceX even has got some experience involving flying debris from beneath the launch pad. The two suborbital Starship test pads in Boca Chica don't have flame diverters, but building one for those pads would be really difficult due to the very small size of the pads. Like when static firing serial number 8, SpaceX ran into some trouble with chunks of concrete being blown out of the protective layer underneath the small pad. And one of those chunks somehow managed to fly directly into one of SN8's engines, resulting in the static fire failing and that specific engine being molten. But since then, SpaceX seems to have found a way to avoid concrete flying through the air, since every test after SN8 didn't send pieces into the air. We don't know how they did that, but there are some people theorizing they may have reinforced the floor beneath the pad with a material called marshite, making it strong enough to withstand the power of the three Raptor engines on a Starship prototype. The fact that they have fixed such issues before may give SpaceX confidence and belief they could handle the lack of flame diverter on their orbital pad the same way as they did on their suborbital pads. But there is one problem. The suborbital pads have to withstand the power of three Raptor engines of a Starship. The orbital pad will experience the force of 28 engines of a super heavy booster pushing onto the ground beneath it. That's more than 10 times the thrust the suborbital pad has get around with. The way SpaceX protects the suborbital pads might just be way too weak to withstand that insane amount of power. And that's the exact reason why Elon noted that this could in fact turn out a mistake. SpaceX will at least try to launch without a flame diverter, but they are well aware that it might not work out as planned. But SpaceX is known for their learning by doing mentality, and only the future will show whether a flame diverter is really needed or not. And that already was the story of Boca Chica's missing flame diverter. If you enjoyed it, why don't leave a like and subscribe to the channel? If you did so, I'd really appreciate it. We see ourselves next week with the next video, and until then, I'm out. Cheers!